So I just want to share that in case you're wondering or you've forgotten why you're here. It is for building a mindful community. And we are presenting this with Heritage University, as well as the Mindfulness Institute for Emerging Adults. So we're going to start with some introductions so you know who's in the space facilitating tonight. Suzy, do you want to offer your introduction?
Yeah, welcome everybody. Suzy Diaz. I'm in Toppenish, Washington, the homeland of the Yakama Nation. And it's afternoon for me, much earlier for you, East Coasters. So thanks for making time to be here today.
And I am Vivien Roman-Hampton. I am the Director of Outreach and Teacher Development here at the Mindfulness Institute for Emerging Adults. I am on the East Coast in Nipmuc Nation in Massachusetts, Western Mass, where we've had over 2.5 feet of snow, and there is more snow coming down. So it's been an interesting couple of days. And I guess something I want to share from the perspective of being here is I do a lot of facilitation through MIEA. And I also am getting my PhD where my research is focused on mindfulness and diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I think there's a lot of overlap in the conversation Suzy and I have and in the work that we're doing together. And so our agenda for tonight will be that Suzy will be presenting on Heritage University and YVPE, and then I'll talk a bit about MIEA's role, and then we'll have time for Q&A. So really to the point. Go ahead, Suzy.
Thank you, Vivien. So we are located on the lands of the Yakama Nation, but we are designated as a Native American non-tribal serving institution by the Department of Education. And Heritage University is still very, very young. It's in 1982. Its founding was in 1982. And as Vivien knows, she has to drive through hop fields to get to us. We are very rurally located and surrounded by hop fields. And so our campus doesn't have dorms. So we are what we call a commuter campus. And from its founding, this is where there's alignment with MIEA. It was also founded by 3 amazing women. One was a nun and the other 2 Native American wonderful women. And we still have the founding president walking our hallways and very much engaged. And she is an amazing founder, Dr. Ross. And we're lucky to have her presence and to grow as an institution over time. But we are rooted on the homeland of the Yakama Nation. And so if you visit, as Vivien has, you'll see things that help us connect. We don't disrupt our view of Pato, which is known to people as Mount Adams. And that's the view of one of the mountains that are sacred to the Yakama people. And so our buildings are low. We tend not to have anything that's 2 stories. So these are the ways that we live in community with the Yakama Nation. Next slide. And so what is the role of my position within Heritage University? I'm the director for the Cradle to Career Collective Impact Network, known locally as Yakama Valley Partners for Education. And because that's a mouthful, we just say YVPE for short. And our mission connects to this work in that mindfulness is embedded in our mission statement, right? And so what does it mean to mindfully allocate resources, right? Presence comes to mind, connection, listening, engagement, but also reciprocity is deeply rooted in our work. And our vision was that we could have systems of support for all individuals. And we know that we don't all start at the same place and we don't all arrive at the same place at the same time together. And so we knew that going in, and part of our work is to deliver resources directly to the people and allow the people to help inform the delivery of future resources. And so you see the first cohort They received this facilitation through Vivien and Gigi at the time. And you see a child in the space, right? The curriculum may not be, and the certification curriculum may not be designated for little people to be with us among the older people, but it worked. And 10 of these cohort members received simultaneous translation. And so we were able to provide this first experience bilingually, cross-sector. These folks are not practitioners in the behavioral health space. These are coming from different community-based organizations, different ages, and certainly different level of experience. And so that really ignited what we would come to do in year 2. Next slide. And so we use a collective impact approach. For those that are familiar with Stanford Innovation article in 2015 or thereabouts about collective impact using what we call cross sectors of different sectors coming together to solve or gather around a result that they want to see. It's data informed, it requires input, a lot of time, and you start with a strategy or result in mind. And for us, we wanted to provide training opportunities. So we had 4 strategies. Skill development. Once you have the training, sometimes the training for a lot of communities is sort of the end thing. You know, we trained you, therefore you should be able to do. We know that that's not how people learn, and we wanted to support people through the training. So then we engaged in kind of a relationship with the folks that gathered, that we would support them as they helped others develop their skills. And in turn, the teacher or the facilitator would also be developing their own skill set and comfort in delivering this curriculum. So skill development was separate from training intentionally. We wanted to provide internships to our partners who needed that extra capacity support. And then as we do most of our work in the community-based events are always set up to deliver an exchange of resource, connection, food, and we provided over $17,000 in food supports through this inaugural annual year of our work. And really the result we want is for people to feel like they belong in place. And so particularly aimed at youth and emerging adults, ensuring that they felt a sense of belonging and could feel some of that through this work. Along the way, because we are a data-informed network, we measured certain things, put a lot of energy into the qualitative as well as the quantitative, but part of our work that resonated so deeply with us were the immediate quotes of people who were receiving these supports and experiencing this many times for the first time. So we had some K-12 leaders in the space and community-based organizations, many of which have to do this primarily in Spanish, and then most have to do it in a bilingual sense. And so there's also that complexity of delivery where you bridge culture and language together. And then our parents, we know that culturally, if we support parents, that they in turn help us support their students. And we had a community college approach that embedded this more as an HR component and trying to create retention within their workplace, which is a wonderful, I think, demonstration of all the ways you could apply this type of curriculum. And so accessibility, number one, rather than have people come to the university, we wanted to deliver something where the university, even if it was secondhand, right, was coming out into the community and making a direct contribution. And we know you can't train enough people to touch the people in the community. Our county is rather large. So we want to develop self-agency. If we could empower the people themselves to acquire and learn some skills, feel confident in their ability to gain these skills, then their own self-agency would increase. And then like everything we do, we don't want it to be a transaction. So how could we do this in a meaningful and intentional way that it turned more into a transformation? And so making a long-term commitment, engaging in relationships with people. And because we're funded by the state for our first year, we knew we had to be data informed, and we had to create a situation where, how do we create opportunities to gather data that's not a survey, because the teachers, the facilitators who were going through their certification process were getting their own data. But how could we get some other data that supported making the case for additional dollars? And because this wasn't going to be in a fixed location, supporting the people who gathered with us in a way that they could deliver it in any setting. So it was really wonderful to see how folks, once they were given that permission and support, we oftentimes said, tell us where you're going to have this. We'll have the food delivered. One less thing for them to manage, and it turned out wonderfully. And then we partnered with another university, it's University of Washington out of Seattle, and they provided independent sort of early outcomes for the project over the course of the first year. Next slide. And so what does this work look like, right, in community? These are the spaces that were used, community-based organizations, office spaces, and community rooms located in a partner agency organizational space that supported some of this. But, you know, it's not like, it's not a spa, it's not perfect in that way, it's not necessarily conducive to being able to feel like you can really zen out, but it was effective. These spaces were known to the community people. They were trusted spaces, and they were easily located within their community. And so that was really important for this work. Of the 25 first cohort members, 3, I believe, Vivien, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 completed their certification. We collectively reached over 400 people. And because we pair resources, I shared how much we spent on the food component. In addition to that, we have access to like fidgets and books and those types of things that are social emotional learning related, and 518 of those items were distributed by these teachers who were out in the community gathering folks and imparting some of this wonderful training with them. So you can, you know, I sprinkle quotes because you think what I say is one thing, but what the participants say in their own words is equally important. And if for us, it's even more important because it gives us sort of a little bit of a pressure to maintain the service, but really think through how can we make this something that we can keep in our community over time. So it'll take a while for us to see some of these conditions that plague our community change over time. Next slide. And so I often get asked, how did you fund this? Our first year was a legislative state public dollars. We found a senator, and then another colleague of mine found a representative that would be open to what we called the development of a wellness zone. And this required cross-state collaborations. So there were folks in different counties across the state. And this is what happened. We were able to get a sponsor in the House, a sponsor in the Senate, and the request went through. It was funneled through the Office of Homeless Youth, and collectively we received $1 million spread across 4 different communities across the state. And for YVPE, our portion of that was about $195,000. And so that's what we used to power this for the first year and into the second year. But moving forward, you know, Washington State is facing unprecedented fiscal cliffs and financial deficits and, all the woes that come with that. So we know that that isn't an avenue for this work moving forward in the short term, but we have engaged with philanthropy. And so what you have on this slide are keywords that I use when I'm searching for grants. And what I love about MIEA and its curriculum is the application. Is that the application is sector proof, it's time proof, and it's important across the lifespan of any individual to self-regulate in the workforce and in the home, in the classroom and among your peers. That self-regulation, that ability to approach life with compassion, feeling like you have a little bit more personal capacity, but also imparting the ability for other people to build their own capacity is very important, especially in today's day and age. And I say that every year. YVPE launched in 2020, a month before the pandemic. And if we thought that time was hard, it seems here we are 6 years later, and things feel a little more difficult socially. And so you bring that into the workplace, you bring that into the school, you bring that into your home. And so our hope is that we continue to do this. From an institutional perspective at Heritage University, we're always looking at the consideration of what if you, knew without a doubt, right? Your future students are out in the community today. And so if you empowered your team to go out in service into the community and push your university walls and go beyond the classroom, what would that look like? Where is there an opportunity to showcase compatible academic programs? Sure, psychology, social work, those types of things are obvious, but mindfulness is industry proof. Right? In the boardroom, you need to be able to articulate some challenges and work through problems. Self-regulation is, it's woven throughout. One must be able to do that. And so retention becomes another area. It's not just enough to retain people, but if they were at least able to do their work with less stress over time, and more compassion, more creativity, more energy, that by itself is worth the effort. And then something that I get really excited about is what if, and we're not here with our own institution, but if I had a magic wand and I could do this, what if I could connect with one alumni of my institution and go out to their place of work and offer this service and have that be that reciprocity that's built into this practice of connecting and sharing and growing in your own person. So if I could, in the future, work on an alumni strategy, that would be one of the places that I would love to do some work. And go out, connect with an alumni, have the alumni facilitate the opportunity to bring this into their work environment. And then over time, what that could do as a service from an institutional point of view. So I think that's all I have. Happy to take any questions about our approach and the work.
If there's people want to hold off, they can until I finish my part. If nothing is brewing right now to the surface, we can move into the second part of our presentation. Thank you, Suzy. So what is MIEA and how do we fit into all this? So for those of you that aren't familiar with the Mindfulness Institute for Emerging Adults, I wanted to share the study that created this institute. And so it was a mindfulness training program for college students and other emerging adults in the Journal of American College Health back in 2014. So it's been 12 years now. And Dr. Holly Rogers, who's here in our audience tonight, and Dr. Margaret Maytan were both, with both mindfulness practices, were recognizing the benefits of mindfulness and how could they get this to their students. And one of the dilemmas was we could work with one student at a time, but that wasn't enough for the needs of their students on campus. And so they worked to create this curriculum. And one of the things I love about that is that they worked to create this curriculum with their students, meaning that they would go through these different practices and students would share like, oh, that practice, save that for later. This one was great. We should learn this right away. And it really helped formulate what the 4 weeks of this curriculum look like. So the Intro to Mindfulness curriculum is a 4-week curriculum, 75 minutes a session. And it is the curriculum that was published and became, at that time, the most downloaded journal article of 2014 for this journal. And once published, Holly and Margaret started getting calls from other universities saying, hey, our students are struggling too. Come here and teach us how to do this. And so just to share a little bit about the results, what they found from this randomized control trial was that there was an improvement in self-compassion and mindfulness, a large improvement. There was a reduction in what students perceived as stress, their perceived levels of stress, and there was improvement in sleep. Who doesn't love that? And so there was this recognition that here is this this offering that is effective, and in particular for emerging adults. So there were particular pieces of this curriculum that really spoke to emerging adults, right? And so we're looking at this sort of more condensed time frame of the 75 minutes. This was a group experience, and so you have this relational mindfulness aspect to it. The concepts, the book that Holly wrote, which the second edition, I believe, is coming out now in March, is the Mindful 20-something, and these concepts really spoke to emerging adults. But what we found with all of our teachers who have gone through the teacher training is that they're teaching across the age spectrum. And these concepts of the Mindful 20-something, as well as just mindfulness in general, has been applicable to all of them. And so it's so wonderful when we get to hear stories of people sharing how, oh, I'm teaching this with a certain age community, and it really resonates with them as well. So I wanted to speak a little bit about the research in regards to, mindfulness and community, right? And so when we think about mindfulness and inclusivity and multicultural belonging, we recognize that mindfulness fosters awareness of interconnection, as well as historical oppression and unconscious bias and microaggressions. And when we think of mindfulness in this practice, it's also this recognition that it is not passive or apolitical, that mindfulness can support discernment, it can strengthen capacity to respond skillfully to injustice. And I'm going to say that last line again, that it strengthens capacity to respond skillfully to injustice. Mindfulness helps individuals speak up without being overwhelmed or disconnected. And so why is this important in a community? And it's important because mindfulness helps support dialogue across differences without erasing pain or power dynamics. And I think that's so important when we think about the opportunity to bridge, is that we're not trying to bypass experiences of people and say like, oh, let's just sit together and breathe and pretend none of this happened, right? What we are trying to acknowledge in this space is that it is difficult. There is discomfort here. There is suffering. And we can do this and not erase these experiences for others, and really support an opportunity to come together. And so this is really relevant in communities that face a lot of marginalization. And this research done by Bratt really frames mindfulness as a foundation for inclusive multicultural communities and social justice engagement. And so we can also look as mindfulness as a tool of collective care and community resilience, recognizing that while for many of us who engage in practices of mindfulness, it might feel very individual, but mindfulness really can support the health of groups, of movements, of communities. And so when we think about community-based mindfulness practices, what we're hoping to sort of see or improve is reducing burnout, supporting group cohesion, and strengthening long-term engagement. And we heard Suzy talk about that. Like, this is a years-long relationship. And as a result of that, what we do is we also build trust and sustainability. Right? People start to feel comfortable. They start to feel this sense of cohesion. And practices that we can engage in when we're thinking about this collective care and community resilience includes group check-ins, retreats, and shared silence. And it's funny to think of shared silence and then see this next bullet of it improves communication. But it really does. When we recognize that we don't have to fill the space with chatter, but that we really can be in community with each other in this sense of intentional silence, it does. It does improve communication. It does build group cohesion. It also is opportunity to resolve tensions and to foster this idea of being in common rather than this individual self-optimization. So really moving from this place of othering to belonging, that we are all part of this. And so why does this matter in the community? For sure, this piece around sustainability and trust, but also the retreats and shared practices are opportunities to offer a community a collective nervous system regulation. And that was something Suzy talked about, this emotional regulation piece. When we could think about the opportunity to come together and collectively regulate our nervous system, especially in high stress environments, I feel like I would like to just offer this in every state of our country right now. And so Schmidt and Eichen talked about this research, and what they describe this as is what we call transformative mindfulness. And Suzy, you spoke to this idea of that transformation. So this transformative mindfulness is about integrating inner awareness with collective action and social change. And so I would love to keep talking more about research, but I will stop here because I think I still have all of your attention. So I want to talk about our arc of support here with Heritage and YVPE as far as MIEA is concerned. And so in year one, we offered the teacher training, as Suzy shared, and that was an opportunity to really build local capacity and leadership. And so we went right through the teacher training that we offer here, both at hosted sites and online, and really got to know the community. One of the things I love about the experience at Heritage is that Suzy and I worked together. And so there was, when we were teaching, I'm teaching in English, Suzy's teaching in Spanish. And for me, there was this real sense of becoming part of the community. And not so much like, oh, here's Vivien, she's teaching mindfulness, bye. It's sort of like, okay, here I am, and I'm going to build these relationships by myself. But this sense of like buy-in from Suzy of here's Vivien, and we're all doing this together. And so I thought that was really powerful and important to this sense of community building. We also offered the retreat. So we have a 4-hour retreat, and we offer that. And this experience in year one was so wonderful and fun and beautiful for so many reasons. But one of the things I loved about the retreat was how people asked so many questions ahead of time, like, what do you mean we're going to be quiet for 4 hours? Like, what exactly does that mean? You mean we're going to eat in silence? And there was so much of this sort of curiosity around like, how does this take place? And then when it was done, this transformation in just 4 hours of people recognizing how powerful silence can be, this intentional silence. But you know, this piece of teacher training, Suzy really also embedded in these like community experiences of food being really important culturally and like being weaved throughout from breakfast to our lunchtime, like really just bring the invitation of like eating together, the invitation of bringing people, if like you didn't have a babysitter or someone who could support, everybody's welcome here. And I just so appreciated how the space opened up for everybody as a result. And so then we were invited back for year two. And in year two is when we offered Teaching Mindful Moments. And Teaching Mindful Moments was an opportunity for the next group of people to start to integrate mindfulness into daily community roles. And so when we think about teacher training, that is a year-long process. People go through the training and then they have a year to complete their portfolio. And so they're teaching courses and they're doing a lot of readings. There's a number of different things that are going on there. And with Teaching Mindful Moments, you're learning skills that you can then walk out tomorrow and just start teaching these moments of mindfulness and weaving them into your work within the community. And so it was wonderful to be able to hear what people were doing out in the community and then start to think about how we're going to integrate this, so it feels seamless. So it doesn't feel like you're talking about one thing and then making a left or saying, oh, and now I want to bring in mindfulness and then coming back to whatever it is and course correcting, but just that there's this natural progression of how a conversation flows and noticing what's arising for someone and how you might want to offer a moment of mindfulness in that time. And in year two, also, we had the retreat and got to see some of the teachers from year one who came to join us for this retreat, as well as our new teachers in Mindful Moments. And so now for year three, we've been invited back. And so Suzy and I are going to work on planning that next. And this statement that I have here about mindfulness is most effective when it is shaped by the people who will live it is really now, again, what we'll be thinking about for year three. We had asked some questions in a survey of like, what do you think you need or what might be helpful? And some things we heard was maybe an in-depth workshop on trauma-informed mindfulness. Perhaps mindfulness for caregivers, teachers, laborers, culturally responsive practices for a bilingual, multilingual community, or collective resilience and community healing. So there's lots of things to choose from. And as the year has continued, Suzy and I will talk about what seems to be sort of bubbling to the surface that feels really important to address. But I really appreciate that they're thinking about this still, that they continue to think about how mindfulness can support themselves and what they're doing in the community, as well as those that they're serving. And so how do we embody these principles for MIEA? We partner with campuses, with businesses, community organizations. And what we don't do is offer the same thing to everybody all the time. Yes, we have an evidence-based curriculum, and for sure we have offered this at YVPA, PE. But we also recognize that we're not just going to come in and say, well, this is what you need to learn every single time, because that's not going to be effective as you grow a community. A community has lots of different needs, just like a campus. And so we think about what can we offer that is most beneficial at the time that's being asked for and for those that they're looking to serve in the moment. And so our programs are co-created within our communities, within our campuses, within our organizations. We really want to be responsive to cultural and institutional and lived realities, right? There's a lot of things going on, and what's happening on one campus may look very different on another. What's happening in one community may look very different than another. And we want to ensure that what we offer is trauma-informed and equity-centered. And so you'll see here on the right of the slide is just this recognition of like what we've been doing. We have served over 300 institutions worldwide. Right now, I am in the middle of an advanced mindfulness course with about 12 teachers from Ireland, serving in different universities there. So we really are worldwide. 1,600 teachers, over 75,000 students taught. So we have a little bit of experience with this. So I just want to talk a little bit about the different pieces of MIEA. And, our teacher training workshop, which we offered in year one, is the training that is 3 days in person, 5 days online. And it really is an opportunity to look at the developmental challenges faced by our emerging adults, which is that age range of 18 to 30 years old. We explore research and the curriculum, our relevant mindfulness studies are all related to that developmental stage. And like I said, we still have teachers teaching to the whole age spectrum. During that teacher training, people learn and practice their MIEA skills and meditations a lot. And we also make sure that people really start to understand the curriculum, like what is happening in this space, what is happening when I'm facilitating a group, how is this working? What am I getting done in 75 minutes over 4 weeks? We also offer the MIEA retreat as an opportunity for you to experience it in sort of that student capacity to see what that feels like. And teaching mindful moments is what we offered in year 2. And so that is when that's offered out to teachers, it is a 5-week course with 90-minute sessions. And you're learning to lead brief and effective mindfulness practices. So if you've never had any experience in mindfulness, that's okay, because over those 5 weeks, we work on developing your personal practice, if that's something you're looking to do, as well as how you can create accessible tools designed for all levels. So how can I offer mindfulness in a multitude of settings? What are the settings I'm really looking to offer moments of mindfulness in? And what we're trying to do in those moments is reduce stress, build focus, enhance well-being, build community. And it's adaptable to the audience. So we really want people to walk out of teaching mindful moments and feel like, oh, I work in this sector and I can offer mindfulness. Oh, I work in this sector and I can offer mindfulness. And not from this place of a really in-depth, long practice, but these moments of noticing something's arising for someone and being able to offer something supportive. It's an opportunity to say to someone like, I see you, and I'm here to connect with you. And then finally, one of the other things we offer is our Steady at Work program, which is for organizations. So if we're working within a community and it's like, oh, here's our campus, is what we're doing here. Oh, here's what we're doing in these other particular organizations. But here at this business, we're looking at something different. We have our Steady at Work program. And this program has, as you'll see, a 4-week program for our early career professionals. We also have a leadership module that's 4 weeks, and then we have a half-day retreat. And so again, different goals, so to speak, or focuses. So we're looking to build confidence and resilience within our early career professionals. For our leaders, we want to enhance emotional intelligence and presence. And in our retreat, we want to create a sense of collectiveness, of community that's focused and restorative. And I'm going to stop there. If anyone ends up having other questions that they're like, oh, I forgot, I want to talk to Vivien about whatever, this is my email address. You absolutely can reach out to me at any time. Let's stop this share so we can see all of the wonderful faces here. All right. So what questions do we have? And there's Holly. Hi, Holly.
Well, I'll say hello and just kind of introduce a little bit why I chose to sit in on this tonight. So I'm Eva Thomsen. I teach at Austin Community College, and several years ago, it was after we returned to campus after COVID lockdowns and all that. Just my observation of students in the classroom was that we were all a little on edge and we were uncomfortable being with each other. And I had my own mindfulness and meditation practices off and on throughout the years. And I decided to really kind of take that opportunity to offer something different to the students that were coming onto campus into my classroom. So I did a mindfulness certification here in Texas through the Dallas Yoga Center, and it was really wonderful, really helpful. I'm a licensed counselor and had moved out of counseling at the college setting to be more on what I think of it as like kind of the public health side of like counseling. So I teach a class that is educational psychology based for all our first year incoming students. And it's motivation, mindset, learning theory, how our brain works. So things of that nature. And so I have been using mindfulness in the course, starting every class with anything. Well, we're in our first week right now, except we're shut down because of the storm. So anything from like a 3-minute to a 10-minute to I'm working with an art gallery on our campus to do art-based mindfulness for a full class session. And so that's like our longest engaged, and I simply love it. But I'm struggling with how do I, it is Texas and it is Austin. And so I can't even imagine in my wildest dreams that we would get legislative support to fund something. But I'm so curious about how you did that, and that it came from this like youth-focused approach. And just looking at like scaling something that I do and maybe working more with MIEA. I've not heard it pronounced like that. So I'm like, okay, MIEA, that's how y'all say it. But I'm ironically also, my son is in Tacoma, Washington, and I'm born and bred New Yorker. And so I'm feeling the coastal thing and also Minneapolis. And I'm very interested in social justice and how, I think politically, actively in higher ed in Texas right now, like I'm at home, but is anyone listening to me kind of nervous about some of this stuff? So any guidance on scaling, funding, and or navigating some of this terrain would be lovely. So that was a lot. Thanks for listening.
No, and thanks for everything you do to support students and your colleagues through your work. I think that's really important. I would say that if a creative session comes to mind or easily for you, just jotting down all the adjacent sectors, like who is compatible with my teachings, my practice, my sectors. Where do my students go? Like, where are those fields that they enter? Another way is, who benefits? If I do this one thing well, who benefits, right? And then being able to approach and create your network of beneficiaries and champions for the outcome. So there's the what you are doing, which is the service, but then the outcome is the other piece. And working within those sectors. So some folks have training dollars, others have education dollars, others have community outreach dollars. And being able to piece together or braid a pilot and having someone, can I just test this one thing? But what was absolutely impactful and made the difference for us was the cross sector. We didn't position this in a behavioral health space. Right. And so that's where it traditionally kind of lives, and it's sort of these quasi-religion, quasi-health-ish sectors. So we know that that's the norm, right? But how do you convince someone that there's benefit outside those sectors? Is by giving them that experience and then trying that out. You may not find champions. So we know we're not going to approach the state for any additional supports. We're at a state deficit, and we know that if we receive some support, somebody else loses, and it's not really adding to the whole. But we now have data that we share back to those early adopters and early champions at the legislative level that says, remember, you helped us get here. Here's what we're continuing to do. So we don't release the folks in that communication cycle we instead double down and say, because of you, this is what we continue to do. And I think that that's really important. And then being able to think about philanthropy that connects with your university and also in the community. So maybe your university may not be the optimal applicant, but a community partner might. And that's where I think the alumni connections can sometimes come in. So where do they work? Do they have a corporate social responsibility program that gives grants back? Banks are amazing to look at these short-term, let me test something. They tend to have smaller dollars, but they tend to invest in their community. So really that corporate space is really critical and helpful in supporting some of that. And if you have medical schools nearby, it's another wonderful opportunity. I think this idea of food security for Native communities, food sovereignty is important. And so looking at those sectors and seeing if there's any grants that are able to come through from that. So it is a little bit of technical skill, right? And then being able to check if you have a public library where they can help you with the search and to say, here's some keywords, who funds these, and as just an initial search. And oftentimes they have the database for philanthropy available for free and can run a search for you if your institution doesn't have it. And we certainly didn't receive $195,000 a year for year 2 or year 3. And so that is the other thing that I would say about MIEA is that, you know, I get to the end of a calendar year and I'm like, oh, I have extra money, please send me an invoice. And they're so responsive and able to work with me on a time crunch, and the flexibility to work out the details as the community moves along is really important. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Suzy. And thank you, Eva, for that question. I see a question from Holly asking about, can you say more, Suzy, about who were the people who attended the training and what was their role in the community?
Yeah, great question. Part of it is that Collective Impact started in 2020, so I sort of had a little bit of a head start on this. But when I say cross-sector, we had some K-12 providers, and the K-12 providers range from principals to support classroom support staff. So there's variation even in that sector. From a community-based organization perspective, we had immigrant serving folks come in the room. They brought members of their organization. Those were the predominantly Spanish speakers. Another community-based organization focuses on 0 to 5. They train parents to be teachers. So it's the Parent as Teacher program provider, 2 of which certified fully and are in year 3 doing amazing things, and we're continuing to support their work. And then we had a sprinkle of business owners, restaurant owners. We had traditional sector, right, who you would expect in the room, behavioral health providers, a few counselors that were in the space. And like my staff members we don't provide any direct service. They were also there. And then we had a interesting collection of folks that are very Catholic and participate in their community. In where I would say that we could do something slightly different is connecting in the people who come to this kind of work, checking in with them and connecting, expanding their own concepts of wellness in different sectors and how wellness is delivered in different sectors. Because I think that does a lot to give them the ability to say, who do we partner with other than Suzy? Right? Because Suzy's only one person, but let me build their resources, right? And so that's where I want to go next in terms of empowering that core group. And I would say year 2, the group was slightly different. We had academic faculty members in this space. beauticians, hairdressers who also then did retreats immediately after, some more school-based personnel, but it was a very different group of people. And so for year 3, we don't know who that will be, although I'm very curious and interested. I have a couple of strategies that I'm going to test out before Vivien comes back around. But this is the beauty of it, is that it allows us to test different strategies about outreach and who's going to be in the space. And the one challenge for me is the language component, is the active and simultaneous translation, because that tends to be provided by me. But often if we wanted to scale, right, what would that look like? It's empowering, it's beautiful. Impact was made. There's no difference in both groups. Absolutely win. What was beautiful was to see the folks that went through the class 1 who were part of the English cohort. For year 2 and 3, they're teaching it in Spanish. But because they could experience me simultaneously teaching it, the vocabulary is different, your voice, all of these things, right, are important. They also were able to have a firsthand experience of like, oh, you can't do this in Spanish. And then they asked us for the Spanish scripts and all of these other things, but they're teaching it in Spanish now, but they learned it in English. So that's also a very adaptable process.
Thank you, Suzy. Yeah, I was going to ask you something, but I see that Tammy asked a question. When will the next training online be offered? So the next teacher training online will be in June. And our website shows those trainings. We have one in June and one in July online, if you're looking at the teacher training. Our Teaching Mindful Moments will be taught again in March. There's currently one running, but there'll be another one in March. Holly, do you have those dates? Yes, Holly's posting those dates. Thank you. Yeah, Suzy, I wanted to ask, this piece you had said, here's some of the things I would have done differently, right? Like we sort of get to process after. And I wonder, do you think that the class, do you think year 1 was, should have been a smaller group? Do you feel like we had there was a number that sort of made the outreach you were looking for? What was sort of year 1 goals from a mindful community perspective?
Yeah, and I would say year 1, I actually wanted it to probably larger on the Spanish side. Yeah, I think that there's something about opportunity, place, accessibility, location, and that type of thing. So I would actually go the other direction in terms of scale. Year 2 was smaller because we weren't as probably that Spanish speaker component. We weren't as prepared to provide that second cohort. And so that's where for sure year 3 would be like, okay, let's not lose the Spanish language access. Let's work through that piece. And then just in terms of why we had to do it that way, I broke my ankle severely, like it required surgery, all these things in May. So by the time Vivien came back around, I was still in a boot. Maybe I was hobbling around in a boot and maybe even a scooter in the room or something. So it was more about me, my capacity. But I would say that the scale is impacted by language more so than anything.
Thank you. And Suzy, you had to keep your foot propped up the whole time. So I feel like you might have just been recovering from surgery. So you were holding a lot. Thank you, Holly. Holly posted that, that the Teaching Mindful Moments will be April 9th to May 7th. Holly will be teaching it. And the teacher trainings, June. Holly will be teaching June, and I'll be teaching in July. So thinking about this year 3, And I think about the feedback that we got initially about things people wanted. And now here we are in January, and a lot of things have been going on. Do you feel like there has been a shift around the community's needs of what might be helpful? Or do you feel like they're still holding those same needs around perhaps some trauma-informed mindfulness or mindfulness for specific groups that they're working with? Or is there anything else arising?
Yeah, I think it's created additional need for spaces of trust, right? And so I see the potential for the online component that we built into possibility for year 3 of just, even if it's a small little intervention piece, we are expanding, we're testing a mindfulness piece in April in a different part of our community. Our county is really large. We have something we call Upper Valley, Mid Valley, Lower Valley, and that's a big, there's 15 school districts. It's just a really big area. And so we want to use April as a way to bring people back into connection with MIEA in the fall. So those are the pieces that we are working, and we're seeing a need very similar to COVID times. I mean, COVID wasn't just COVID. You had the suffrage movement celebration. It was a census year. It was critical race theory challenges for K-12 systems. You had the murder of Mr. Floyd, and then you had COVID. So you had the convergence of 5 very important, critical things happening in 2020. And so here we are, 6 years later, and there's probably more visibility, more, challenge in a completely different way. But I think of the trauma-informed pieces and how many folks are trauma triggered from 2020. On top of the regular trauma every person will have just because you endure a life. And, it's creating for me the urgency to ensure that people have a space to almost land and generate additional reserves without that depletion piece, because it is so exhausting to try to do the good work that they have to do as direct service providers, organization providers, teachers, professionals, business people, under regular circumstances. But we really want to nurture their ability to be well, and then expand compassion. It's what we need, and the more we can facilitate that, I think, is important. So I would say maybe some smaller gatherings of folks. And then if I'm talking about our community, I would say that the leaders in those direct service providers would be one, and then I'd have the community service providers probably in another, and then a mix. And I think that would be a good way to gather folks to just be able to catch their breath.
Thank you for that. I have another question, but I just want to see if anyone else has anything that's on their mind, anything they're curious about. You absolutely can use the chat if you don't feel like speaking up right now. I was thinking about the funding piece and how, year 1, you had the funding, and then in year 2 and 3, it sounds like philanthropy stepped in that sense, that sector. And so is there sort of a plan with Heritage and YVP around, is this a 5-year plan? Is this a 7-year plan? And if so, where are the potential ideas for funding moving forward?
Yeah, I think the potential, the runway for workforce development, I think, is probably the widest runway for everybody across the board, because that's more about skill building, right? It gives you a lot of flexibility to make the connection of self-regulation in a boardroom, in a classroom. Making decisions is easier if you are not under stress. And for those sectors that stress is every day. You know, I think of a firefighter, right? Stress is the condition under which they're doing their work. Making sure the burnout piece is there. And so I would say that for us, we're going to look more into workforce development. The plan, of course, is in perpetuity. That would be my dream, because this is industry proof. This is something that a person will always need. It's always a great reminder from a diversity, equity, inclusion, how you access these types of places and spaces, usually spas, you know, usually these retreat centers that are require you to travel and kind of leave and go do it. And that has its value. You know, when I did MIEA, at the time it was Koru in 2019, 18 or 19, I think it was 2018. You know, Santa Cruz, wonderful cedar. It was just like the redwoods, and the trees were amazing. And I left my community and traveled to my birth state to do that. Right? But it was important. I didn't know at the time that it would become critical to do that. So as a teacher in the wild, my busiest time was 2020. And so for us, yes, we're developing a strategy. We are looking at funding, and we're likely going to braid it because we have the food security component. Food security is one of our big strategies, and that we lead with a community through food. So that's our way in most of the time. And then training, skill building, education, workforce development is the other bit. So for us, building a strategy around that is important.
Thank you for that. And I really appreciate you naming that piece around how often we can offer well-being in a way that feels like you have to leave where you are to access it. I can recall in 2020 having, as part of one of my trainings, having to do a 5-day retreat. And that was sort of scheduled prior to COVID. And then they sent an email saying, oh, this is going online. And I can remember my anger about having to stay home for a 5-day silent retreat and just being like, oh, I was supposed to go somewhere. How am I going to be silent for 5 days? And the first instructor came on and shared that I'm sure everybody's really frustrated that they didn't get to go away for their retreat, but I invite you to start to consider that home can also be sanctuary. And it was such a profound moment for me of recognizing that my practice can be here, my well-being can be here. I don't have to leave everything to engage in a sense of well-being. It really changed moving forward how I just thought about all of this. And I just hold on to this now all the time. And now I really lead into retreats at home because I want to be able to incorporate that sense of well-being in my home. How can I do that, here, so that then I can do that at work and I can do that in all these other places instead of feeling like that can only happen if I get away from everything. So it really is important. And especially if you don't have the means for that to take place, to understand that you absolutely can still receive the benefit of improving your well-being, even at home, even, in community, even at school, even at all these different places where we spend so much of our time. Atia, I hope I'm saying that right. You shared.
Yes, you said it perfectly.
Please, yeah.
No, you said it perfectly. Yeah, absolutely. I'm in St. Louis at Washington University. We have a really great community that we've been building here around research and practice, students, faculty, staff, and community. But yeah, one of the ways I learned mindfulness, and I finally learned what it meant for me too. It took years, like decades, to know that I need movement sometimes, or I love forest bathing, and I absolutely love a good retreat, a silent retreat. Get me out in nature because nature co-regulates me like nothing else does. But I learned, the first class I ever really took was in this basement room in a black box in a theater room on campus. And it was at first, it felt like, how is this conducive? And then one of the most important takeaways was that the practice lives within us. So the value of it is that it can happen anywhere with nothing but ourselves. And coming from that place, it was very liberating then. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Could you share a little bit about, you mentioned a part of the portfolio of, or your portfolio of work is focused on workforce development? I don't know, you're on mute in case. Oh, we might have lost Atia for sound. But yes, I want to echo that experience of just wherever you are, mindfulness can be with you. And, you know, the benefits that we can continue to bring in this sense of collective resilience and community building and sustainability.
I apologize. Can you hear me? Because
yes, I can hear you.
Static in my line. The workforce development piece is new for us, and it hasn't really developed yet. But it's coming from an emerging collaboration with another part of our campus that focuses on education more for people who are in full-time positions already. And so the opportunity to possibly work with that part of our campus called CAPS would be amazing, because it's a focus on not so much like undergrad or grad students, but adults who are coming back for different degrees and certifications. And so we are looking or exploring of how to like build that part out even more, because the demand for it is growing.
Yeah, for sure. I'm wondering about that when you talk about the demand is growing. How do you see mindfulness sort of helping support that demand? Because I would imagine that as people come in, there's a sense of like stress level, right? If you're coming back.
Yeah. Yeah. And my background is social work, and I work in the with master's level students, and I also integrate mindfulness in my class, because man, when I was in grad student 25 years ago, I got shingles. I was so stressed out. But and didn't have all the tools yet. Right. But I would say that what we're noticing is that more and more research is talking about what burnout looks like, both in academia and in the workforce. And I think there's just been so much buy-in, and I hate to say it that way for coming from like a capitalistic point of view, but I think there has been so much awareness and understanding of how the spectrum of mindfulness could show up in the workplace and help with either with pro-social relationships and pro-social skill building, or with maybe preventing or mitigating burnout.
Yeah. Okay, Atia, you and I have to talk, because I'm a social worker too. And I teach a socially engaged mindfulness course to MSW students. And same, like they come out of that course and say, why didn't people teach us this sooner? Why are we not teaching this out in the community? You know, it's transformational for how they're holding stress, and then how they're engaging with others in the community in their field practicums or their work already that they're doing out in the community.
Yeah, and anything around organizing and community, right now, activism. This is a space that's very ripe for it, because our students, they often want to get into activism, but we have to talk about everything from self-awareness to emotional regulation, to just how to get help and how to know what burnout might look like. So this gets integrated in that conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Eva, I just wanted to read Eva's chats. It says, so important for students and community here to know this. It is within you to access wherever you are, right? Low SES and transportation concerns bringing this home. Absolutely. Yeah. And that is a large part of our community, college population, workforce, trades, veterans, and non-traditional aged recareering folks. So it sounds like this is happening in multiple other places, is this idea of people coming back in to the campus to potentially change career, or they're just recognizing that whatever they might be doing isn't working for them anymore in the way they hoped. And how do we do that and recognize the importance of holding mindfulness as a skill in a sense to manage all of these other things that are going on. It is most definitely part of our well-being, but there's a sense of a skill building here. Are there any other questions, thoughts, comments that people might be holding right now? Or Suzy, anything you want to share? Holly, the floor is open. If not, I also want to be mindful of people's time.
Just, oh, should I raise my hand, Vivien?
Oh, go right ahead, Holly.
I always forget. I just wanted to thank you and Suzy so much for taking the time to put this conversation together. There's so much important information out there, and particularly Suzy, we at MIEA are all so grateful for you and what you are doing in your community, and for giving us the chance to support you. Your vision is quite remarkable, and it's really such a privilege to be part of it. So thank you, and thank you for sharing tonight.
I want to echo what Holly said. Thank you, Suzy, for being here and sharing, what all the amazing things you're doing over there, as well as just, I feel so lucky to have been part of this now, moving on to year 3. I talk about this experience regularly. Holly and Libby know that I have talked about it a lot. I talk about it at school because I think what is happening there is just moving to me. Like, it's just, I don't think I have the words to truly express the impact, at least I can say personally, it has on me. So sort of this extension of community, not just the local community, but this sense for me of being extended community and feeling how it reverbs back to me, and thinking about how I want to do things within the communities I'm in because of what's happening in Washington State. So I just feel so lucky to be part of this in the ways that I have been. And want to just offer to any of you that if questions come up, please feel free to reach out to me. I try to make sure that if people have questions during any of these presentations, that everything gets directed to Vivien at MIEA.com and not to the other presenter, because thank you, Holly. I know that you have a lot going on. So please, if there's anything I can't answer, I definitely will reach out to Suzy with like a compilation of questions and say, give me half an hour and let me get these out and get that information back to all of you. But please, I appreciate you all being here and your time and attention. And if anything comes up, please reach out. Otherwise, I really want to be respectful of everyone's time and give you back the rest of your Monday evening, afternoon, wherever you are. So thank you so much. Thank you, Suzy.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.